Let's start with this one over here. Now, usually, converted kingdom halls are like converted Pizza Huts. Once you see that ceiling, you know that church used to have a couple of pizza ovens inside its inception. The same happens with kingdom halls and their very specific look. Once you've seen one, you've seen all of them. Except, there's no mistaking this one, because it even has the religion's old logo as an architectural feature. This former Kingdom Hall is in Milford, Connecticut, and was purchased by a French-speaking Baptist church. Weirdly enough, that Baptist congregation bought the Kingdom Hall for the same reason that was used to manipulate Jehovah's Witnesses into building and paying for it: expansion. Except, in the case of this congregation that is fairly new and already was outgrowing the rental space they had, the expansion is actually true. And judging by the Google images, the construction is still going strong. It looks like Baptist churches are really growing in Connecticut, because here's another one that purchased a Kingdom Hall. This one has been a church for over a decade. If you've been a Jehovah's Witness before, I guarantee something feels weird inside of you when you see the juxtaposition of a very clear Kingdom Hall with a cross on it. That's literally the reason why Jehovah's Witnesses get upset at me selling these cross t-shirts with their website on top. Because as a Jehovah's Witness, you're basically taught to be intolerant against these icons and idols. I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses remove crosses from their hospital rooms or their Airbnbs. But here, we have a Kingdom Hall, built and paid for by the congregation, being used by Babylon the Great for the rest of time. Now, you might think that there's no way the average Jehovah's Witness will be fooled into thinking their congregation needs a new Kingdom Hall every few years. But that's where you'd be mistaken. You see, the leadership usually mixes up congregations. Say you are in the Midtown congregation. Up until a few decades ago, you could belong to that congregation your whole life. That's not how congregations work anymore. Now, the leadership will come into your central congregation and decide that they're going to divide it into the North and South congregation. And those two congregations are going to merge yet another two congregations that got fractured just like yours did. You can't even choose which congregation you end up in. You must do what you're told and go to the congregation you got assigned to go to.
Did you see? They have us going to the South congregation, and everybody else from our group is going to North.
Yeah, I saw that. My aunt and cousins will be going there too.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. They should keep you together. Well, at least the brothers said that the list was just a recommendation.
Well, they didn't say it exactly like that. They said if we had extenuating circumstances.
So you don't have to go if you don't want to go.
But Kim, if everyone did that, don't you think...
Hi, Sister Taylor.
Oh, hello, girls.
I saw your name on the list for the South congregation, but your grandkids and their families, they're going to North. So what are you going to do?
What do you mean?
Well, are you going to North or are you going to South?
Now, sweetie, didn't you say you saw my name listed under the South congregation?
Yeah, but...
So, I'll be going to the South congregation.
Well, don't you think it would make more sense if you were in the same congregation as your grandkids and their families?
Does it make more sense? Well, that's a whole different question. The brothers outlined an arrangement. They said they hoped we could support that arrangement, unless we had extenuating circumstances, and I don't have any right now. So, for me, it's simple. Whether I know all of the reasons or not, I'm going to support that arrangement. Oh, look, girls, I've got to go. Oh, and by the way, I hope to see you both in the South congregation.
And now, after reshifting people around, you have the same people that you did before, but divided into brand new different congregations. Jehovah's Witnesses then get told that that was done because of the growth and all of that stuff. And guess what they need now that they're growing? Kingdom halls. Not like the old one you used to have that your congregation built and paid for, but a new one that your congregation can build and pay for. Because that old one is being sold with absolutely all profits going not to the construction of the new Kingdom Hall, but to the religion itself. That's probably exactly what happened to this hall that was sold to the Church of the Nazarene a while ago, and even they couldn't keep it up. You see, this Kingdom Hall was acquired by them as far back as we can go in Street View, and even in 2013 they were already trying to sell it off again. The most recent one has the sign taken off and it looks like it's abandoned. That didn't happen to this other one in Jefferson City, Missouri, which even made the news when it got sold in 2018. And we get to see this gorgeous photo of the original Kingdom Hall with the Jehovah's Witness logo and everything before it got sold to yet another Baptist church, this time in Espanol. That's how we get some more info on the sale, which apparently went for only $90,000. And if you think that's a steal, well, Jehovah's Witnesses seem to also believe that. They were asking more money than that, Angel said. We were patient and waited a few years. So I guess it was Jehovah's plan to put this for sale and get less money than he originally wanted in the first place. But hey, it's all profit because Jehovah didn't pay for all of this. The congregation did. Now, they don't just sell to Baptist churches though. They sold this Kingdom Hall to an Anglican church just a few years ago. We can see it as a Kingdom Hall on Google and then with a giant cross as a church once it was bought. Plus, unlike the ones we've seen so far, we actually have pictures of how this one looks in the inside. This is super weird because inside, it pretty much looks the same than a normal Kingdom Hall. It is very weird to see a classic happy church ceremony happening in what, to me, is very clearly the insides of the Kingdom Hall that looks exactly like the one that I grew up going. A part of my brain insists that these are actually pictures of Jehovah's Witnesses in an alternate universe where they are not a cult because, like I said, I know Kingdom Hall so much so that even though I have never been in this building, I feel like I can recognize it just as I would my childhood home, except for what's happening inside of it. This is how it must feel to see your childhood home being occupied by a completely different family. That's unlike this photo. I'll be honest, when I was searching this and I found this article with this witness cell Elam buys headline, I thought they had the wrong religion because from the photos alone, this didn't look like the inside of any Kingdom Hall I've ever seen. But then I looked it up on Street View and it literally says Kingdom Hall of the Jehovah's Witnesses on Street View. But look at this place. This is like 5 Kingdom Halls put together. Then I did what I should have done, and I actually read the article. And although there was a Kingdom Hall here, this building was technically not just a Kingdom Hall. It was the national headquarters of New Zealand for the Jehovah's Witnesses for 30 years. That's why it's massive. This used to be the New Zealand branch. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. If anything, I'd argue this building has already done far more good than Jehovah's Witnesses ever did in this building, especially if they ended up opening up that soup kitchen and that school there that they wanted to do. But then I read something in the article that surprised me even more. Mr. Radnaraja says it's amazing how easy the sale process was to complete. There were a few groups interested in it. We had favor with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They wanted to give it to a faith-based organization. This is extremely problematic because either this guy lied for no reason or the Jehovah's Witnesses did. Remember, an average Jehovah's Witness would never be allowed to work construction or repairing churches unless those churches are Kingdom Halls that the leadership wants to sell to churches. They wouldn't even be allowed to work doing any kind of service for a different religion since it's considered apostasy, the absolute worst kind of sin you can do as a Jehovah's Witness. That's nowhere in the Bible. Nothing in the Bible tells you that you cannot work for other churches, not even against working for temples for false gods. There's nothing about that. The only prohibition is serving other gods, but nothing in the Bible says that you cannot get paid to remodel a temple. Jehovah's Witnesses get removed and shunned if they do that, not because it's a biblical prohibition, but because it's an elder's manual prohibition. And that's all the biblical basis they need to make your family and friends shun you. There's absolutely no way this religion would help rebuild a church after a natural disaster. Only their Kingdom Halls get that treatment. They believe all other religions are the literal prostitute from the book of Revelation, for crying out loud. They have never had anything but negative things to say about other religions, constantly reminding Jehovah's Witnesses how they are all a part of the same false religion controlled by Satan. But when it comes to selling Kingdom Halls, then they want to favor Babylon the Great? They rather sell it to be used in false worship? Even in the article, the Jehovah's Witness selling the place says that he wasn't surprised that many groups were interested in the property, given that they take such good care of their buildings. Because the congregation pay for that and not themselves. But then this would mean that the Jehovah's Witnesses actively chose to sell it to Babylon the Great instead of, just offices or whatever. Why would they do that? How would Jehovah's Witnesses square up that with what they're told on the platform? And it doesn't even have to be a Christian or Abrahamic religion. Jehovah's Witnesses sold this other Kingdom Hall to a Hindu group in 2018. What's fun is that you can see the Kingdom Hall in the archive, and then you see the jw.org sign be replaced with the new religion sign, but the owners apparently didn't want everyone to immediately know that this was a Kingdom Hall. So if you jump to the newest view, it looks completely different now. This other Kingdom Hall in the UK got sold so recently to a Muslim group. We don't even have a street view of how the mosque looks right now. However, the pictures are mixed, and that's how you can see pictures of how the mosque looks about now. That is definitely the inside of a Kingdom Hall. What's weird is that this is right around the corner from this, a beautiful Jehovah's Witness assembly hall. I wonder how Jehovah's Witnesses feel driving past this mosque that used to be a Kingdom Hall. What would the people who built it or helped renovate or maintain it think of it now? How would it feel not being able to go to your childhood Kingdom Hall anymore? I already mentioned that Jehovah's Witnesses are forbidden from going to any religious service, but there is a slight sort of exception in unique situations, like, say, your husband, who is in a Jehovah's Witness, lost his mom, and he wants his wife, you, to join him for the funeral service in a church. But even then, you, as his wife, should probably decide to not do it. Look at how they talk about this possibility in Questions from Redditors articles from 2002. What if a Christian feels obligated to attend a funeral or a wedding held in a church? An unbelieving husband, for example, may urge his Christian wife to be with him on such an occasion. Could she join him as a quiet observer? Out of regard for her husband's wishes, the wife may decide to go with him, being determined not to share in any religious ceremonies. On the other hand, she may decide not to go, reasoning that the emotional pressure of the circumstances could prove too much for her, perhaps causing her to compromise godly principles. The decision would be hers to make. She definitely would want to be settled in her heart, having a clean conscience. On the basis of her explanation, he may conclude that his wife's presence could give rise to a situation that might be unpleasant to him. He may choose to go alone out of love for his wife, respect for her beliefs, or a desire to avoid any embarrassment. That is how they talk about attending just one funeral in a church, because attending a normal service without any excuse like that would definitely make you eligible for removal and for shunning of everyone in the congregation, family and friends included. There's nothing in the Bible that tells you that you can't join other people in worshiping God. There are no verses that tell you that you cannot go to other temples, to other gods occasionally. As long as you don't actually worship a different God than the Abrahamic God, the Bible is completely okay with it. Remember, the only thing the Bible forbids you from doing is worshiping other gods. And even then, you could argue that going to one service to a different God every now and then can't actually be labeled as worshiping them, as long as you don't actually believe in them and you do it out of just courtesy alone. And even if we agree that no amount of false worship is okay, I can still argue that going to a different temple once or twice a year and even donating to it when you're there will definitely not have the same effects as selling that religion a new temple that your followers graciously built so they can continue that false worship for as long as they want. Now that would actually be supporting them, not just personally, but systematically. At the end of the day, selling a kingdom hall to another religion would mean that Jehovah has one less place of worship and false religion has one more place of worship. So how can Jehovah's Witnesses square up the fact that they shouldn't even attend other religious services while also believing that it's okay to allow a kingdom hall to become a place of false worship where those religious services will be practiced over and over and over again. But this last one isn't a kingdom hall, and it wasn't sold to a church. Meet 1201 New Delaware Street, a gorgeous former assembly hall that got sold to a mega church. That's right, this beautiful building that the Jehovah's Witnesses acquired and dedicated to Jehovah in the 70s after a lot of renovation was sold just a few years ago to the Traders Point Christian Church for almost $3 million. Now, a different religion is using the dedicated building to promote a different blue religious app from the platform. We even have the brochure, which is why we can see not just how beautiful it is, but also how they had to sell this one also below asking price. Man, when will Jehovah bless these selling efforts? According to the article, Jehovah was busy blessing the efforts of the other guy. We believe we'll be more engaged and serve the city if there's a church closer to where you live, downtown Pastor Pete Kinder said. We had been praying about that building in some way. See, this pastor was praying for a building and then he got it. Am I supposed to believe that Jehovah's Witnesses were praying for this building to go for below the asking price? Also, this purchase was only possible thanks to an anonymous donor who gave them money to buy this off the Jehovah's Witnesses. Why can't I have followers who buy me property like that? I'd put it to good use. I'd make it into a dispensary with a nice smoking area or something. Unless, oh my God, is this the Bonus Kingdom Hall? Meet Cannabis, a locally family-owned and operated medical cannabis dispensary in Talihina, Oklahoma, with a very suspicious-looking building. That's right, this is the one Kingdom Hall we would all want to go back to. They really made this building their own. Look at this mural over here. Also, this group looks far more fun than any Jehovah's Witness congregation. You can even see the old sign that used to proudly announce this was a Kingdom Hall, now replaced with a bright big green leaf. And now, I know that my goal in life is to go to Dallas or Oklahoma City, rent a car to take a 3-hour road trip to the middle of nowhere until I find this dispensary, and visit the one Kingdom Hall that would make me extremely happy to be in. Jehovah's Witnesses can't even get high. This Kingdom Hall would now, ironically, be a terrible place to catch Jehovah's Witnesses inside of. I know that this isn't a church, but I couldn't resist adding this one once I found it. And remember, there's nothing in the Bible that tells you that you can't smoke or get high, even though it's considered a gross sin by Jehovah's Witnesses, along with killing and CSA. We've been through the completely unbiblical rules that Jehovah's Witnesses have to follow, but there's one verse in the Bible that I've been saving till now, because it's the one Bible verse that we can apply to selling kingdom halls. Because although the term kingdom hall doesn't appear in the Bible, and neither does the prohibition against working for a church, attending other church event, or smoking a spliff, there's one thing that's clearly mentioned in the Bible. You see, every single kingdom hall, and even the assembly hall that we saw, were dedicated at one point to another to Jehovah in a dedication ceremony. That's also the word that Jehovah's Witnesses used to refer to an individual's baptism, dedication. There's this meeting, usually during the weekend before the building is used for the first time, where this building is prayed over and dedicated to God. And check out what Leviticus chapter 27, verse 28 says. But no devoted thing that a man devotes unconditionally to Jehovah from his belonging may be sold or bought back, whether for mankind or animals or the field he possesses. Every devoted thing is something most holy to Jehovah. How do you think this would apply to the dedicated kingdom halls? Wouldn't this verse prove that God doesn't want you to sell any building you dedicated to his worship? This isn't even saying anything against selling it to false gods or anything. This is about selling them, period. There's no Bible verse that prevents you from working for a church, attending a service to God there, or even against getting high. Heck, there's no Bible verse that mentions kingdom halls, period. Early Christians didn't have any kind of temples and simply gathered in each other's homes. They didn't need to build a church that they could then sell to be used as a Zeus temple. But there is biblical precedent for what you should and shouldn't do with anything you dedicate to God. And that biblical precedent is against what the leadership of this religion is doing. It literally says, don't do it. And that's because this religion isn't really a religion. There are tons of Pharisaical rules about what the average Jehovah's Witness can and cannot do, but the leadership of this group can literally go against what's plainly written in the Bible, and calling them out will get you removed and shunned by the whole group. Kingdom halls aren't there to worship Jehovah. That's just some incidental thing that happens in between the sale of them once they were built and paid for by the congregation, so they can fracture a congregation, make a new one, and decide that this new congregation needs to repeat the process all over again. If the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses is the faithful and discreet slave that Jehovah put over all his belongings, as they teach they are, what do you think he will think when he comes back and realizes that his slave has been doing the one thing the Bible forbids them from doing? But now, if anything, this proves that the Jehovah's Witnesses group is a cult, oppressing their followers with restrictive, unbiblical rules, while the leadership can go against what the Bible literally says, as long as they get to keep the profit. This is how this cult makes its money nowadays, that it can't sell books anymore, by exploiting not people to sell bad books to, but its followers, lying to them, making them build kingdom halls, dedicating them, and making them fully pay for it and upkeep it, only to take it away for them to be sold for profit for the cult, while the followers are left to do it all over again and to shun anyone who disagrees. Thank you so much for watching. This is by no means an exhaustive list of this. I actually ended up finding way more, but I had to stop at some point. However, let me know if you want to see more of those. Maybe we can turn this into a series, especially if you tell me about other ones I didn't mention in the comments. And if you like this video, subscribe and maybe even support me like this guys over here to get videos faster, exclusive videos, downloads, and more. Plus, you can get these offensive t-shirts that I mentioned before in my shop, as offensive as a kingdom hall converted into a church.